Came home to find my husband gone, and in his place, a house covered in proof of my betrayal. My legs shook as I saw a single note on the bed: "You might want to check your loan accounts." I opened my phone and let out a horrified sob as I saw the debt he'd left me with. I never imagined I'd be sharing something so personal here, but I need to get this out. Maybe writing it down will help me process everything. I'm Sarah, 38, and I've been married to Mark, 40, for the past 12 years. We live in a suburb of Chicago, in a house we've turned into a home over the years. Mark works in finance, and I run a small bakery downtown. Our life seems stable, or so I thought. A few months ago, I started noticing changes in Mark's behavior. He became distant, often lost in thought, and his phone was suddenly off limits. Late-night work calls became frequent, and our conversations grew shorter. I attributed it to work stress and tried to be supportive. One evening, after closing the bakery, I decided to surprise Mark with his favorite dinner. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed his car wasn't there. Confused, I entered the house and was immediately struck by an eerie silence. On the kitchen counter, I found a note in Mark's handwriting: "You might want to check your loan accounts." My heart raced. I rushed to our home office and logged into our joint bank accounts. To my horror, I discovered multiple loans taken out in my name, amounting to over $150,000. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to comprehend the situation. Frantically, I called Mark's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. I then noticed an envelope on our bed. Inside were photos of me with an old friend, Alex. Innocent moments captured during coffee meetups and friendly hugs. Alongside the photos was another note: "Thought you should see what I've been dealing with." It hit me like a ton of bricks. Mark believed I was having an affair with Alex. But that wasn't the case. Alex and I had been friends since college, and our relationship was purely platonic. I spent the next few days trying to reach Mark, leaving countless messages and texts all unanswered. I even reached out to his colleagues, but no one knew where he was. It was as if he'd vanished. Determined to clear the air, I met up with Alex to discuss the situation. He was as shocked as I was and assured me he'd had no contact with Mark. Together, we tried to piece together how Mark could have misconstrued our friendship. As days turned into weeks, I had to confront the mounting debt. Creditors began calling, and I realized that Mark had forged my signatures to secure the loans. I filed a police report and sought legal counsel to dispute the fraudulent debts. Emotionally drained and financially burdened, I leaned on friends and family for support. My parents offered me a place to stay, but I was determined to keep the bakery running and maintain some semblance of normalcy. One evening, while closing up the bakery, a man approached me. He introduced himself as Detective Harris and informed me that Mark had been located in Las Vegas. Apparently, he'd been living under a different name and had squandered the loan money in casinos. I felt a mix of relief and anger. How could the man I loved and trusted betray me so profoundly? Detective Harris assured me that Mark would be extradited to Chicago to face charges of fraud and identity theft. The legal proceedings were grueling. Facing Mark in court was one of the hardest things I've ever done. He looked like a shadow of the man I once knew. When asked why he did it, he simply said he thought I had betrayed him and wanted to hurt me in return. The judge sentenced Mark to several years in prison and ruled that the fraudulent debts were his responsibility. While it didn't erase the emotional scars, it provided a sense of justice. In the aftermath, I focused on rebuilding my life. The bakery became my sanctuary, and the support from the community was overwhelming. Alex remained a steadfast friend, helping me navigate the turbulent waters. This experience taught me the importance of communication and trust in a relationship. Assumptions and unspoken grievances can fester and lead to unimaginable consequences. If Mark had confronted me about his suspicions, perhaps this ordeal could have been avoided. A week after Mark was arrested, and I finally started to feel like I could breathe again, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. A woman's voice came through the phone. She sounded nervous. "Is this Sarah?" "Sarah Walker." I said yes. She paused, then said, "My name's Megan. I think we need to talk. It's about Mark." My heart dropped. I told her to meet me at the bakery after hours. I didn't want anyone around for whatever this was. When she walked in, I could tell she was younger than me, maybe late 20s. Long brown hair, shaky hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She sat down, looked me in the eye, and said, "I didn't know he was married." Not until the day he disappeared. That's when everything's fun again. She told me she'd been dating Mark for nearly a year. She met him at a conference in Miami. He told her he was divorced, said his ex had taken everything and he was starting over. She believed him. He even introduced himself with a different last name, Mark Adams. He had a second phone, a rented apartment, everything. I stared at her, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. She said, "He told me he was going to propose. He had a ring. Said he just needed to clear up some financial stuff first." I couldn't believe it. While I was trying to keep our home and our bakery alive, he was off living a whole different life with another woman. Buying rings. Making promises. Then Megan pulled something out of her purse. It was a notebook. She said she found it in his things after he disappeared. He wrote stuff down, she said. Like plans, names, numbers, codes. I took the notebook and flipped through it. My name was in there. My social security number. Loan account details. Even a rough timeline of his exit plan. The last few pages were scribbled like he was losing control. Mentions of people I didn't know, bank transfers, gambling notes, even names of fake companies. My head was spinning. This wasn't just betrayal. This was deeper. It was like Mark had been two completely different people for years, and now I was stuck in the middle of his mess. I thanked Megan and promised to stay in touch. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat on the kitchen floor of the bakery, holding that notebook, trying to make sense of who Mark really was. Then, a few days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "You think this is over. It's not. Ask Alex where the rest of the money went." That's when everything shifted again. Alex? I hadn't thought twice about him. He'd been my rock. He helped me through this whole nightmare. He defended me when Mark left. He showed up when I needed him. And now I was supposed to believe he was part of this? I didn't want to believe it, but the seed was planted. I couldn't ignore it. I invited Alex to the bakery under the pretense of needing help with inventory. I watched him closely, his movements, his eyes, the way he answered questions. Everything felt off. He was quieter than usual, distracted. After we closed up, I asked him point blank, "Did you know anything about Mark's other life?" His face went pale. He said, "Why would you even ask me that?" I told him about the letter, about Megan, about the notebook. He got angry, defensive. Said he'd always been there for me, that he'd never betray me like that. But something in his voice didn't sit right. And then I remembered something, an offhand comment he made weeks ago about a trip to Miami. I'd never thought twice about it. Now, it felt like a clue. He stormed out, said I was letting my trauma make me paranoid. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally waking up to the fact that the betrayal went deeper than I ever thought possible. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know who to trust. But I know one thing for sure, this story isn't over. And I'm starting to think I've only scratched the surface of the truth. A few days passed after the confrontation with Alex. I couldn't shake the feeling something was very wrong, but I didn't have proof, just gut instinct and that anonymous letter. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Alex's trash. Yeah, I waited until late one night, drove by his place after bakery hours, and rummaged through the black bags by his curb. I felt insane. My hands were shaking. But I had to know. And I found something. Buried in one of the bags was a torn envelope from a private mailbox rental company. Addressed to A. Reed. His full name is Alexander Reed. The box was in Las Vegas. My heart sank. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I had to see what was inside that mailbox. I called in a favor from one of my bakery customers, this sweet older guy named Marty who used to be a PI. He owed me a few free cakes, and when I told him what was going on, he didn't hesitate. Marty flew out to Vegas 2 days later. When he called me, he didn't sound like himself. "Sir, you might want to sit down." There were documents inside that box, bank statements, fake IDs, some burner phone receipts, and photos of Alex and Mark together, multiple times, in different cities, smiling, drinking, gambling. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a betrayal. It wasn't just Mark. Alex had been in on it. The whole time he was comforting me, listening to me cry, helping me get back on my feet, he was part of it. They were playing me, tag-teaming the destruction of my life. I felt sick. The worst part? There was a deposit slip showing a transfer $75,000 to a joint account under their names. The name of the account? RNA Ventures. The same fake company name I'd seen in the notebook Megan gave me. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel under a fake name and turned off my phone. I couldn't face anyone. I couldn't look at my bakery. I couldn't even breathe without thinking about every lie I'd swallowed. The next morning, I called the detective working on Mark's case. I told him everything. He told me to stay where I was. They raided Alex's condo 3 hours later. But here's the thing. Alex was gone. Vanished. His car was still in the garage, his phone on the counter, but no Alex. No note. No signs of struggle. Just gone. And then came the second letter. Delivered directly to the bakery's mailbox. No stamp. Just slid in through the slot in the middle of the night. It said, "You weren't supposed to find out. But don't worry. There's more you missed." Inside the envelope was a flash drive. I didn't know whether to open it or burn it, but I plugged it into my laptop, sitting in the office behind the bakery, door locked. There were 5 folders, all named after dates. Inside each, audio files, voice recordings of me, private conversations, calls with friends, recordings from the bakery, from my home, even one of me crying in the bathroom after finding out about the loans. I had been bugged, watched, recorded. For how long? I had no idea. But these weren't accidental. Someone had planned this. Every part of it. And then the last folder. It was titled, Insurance. Inside was a single video file. Mark and Alex. In some rented Airbnb, sitting across from each other, drinking whiskey, talking casually. Then Mark said, "She's tougher than I thought. What if she actually finds out?" Alex just laughed. "She won't. And if she does, we have backups." The video cut off there. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the lights off, listening to every single audio file again and again, trying to figure out what they were after. Why me? Why go to this much trouble? I still don't have all the answers. But I'm starting to think I was just a piece of a much bigger game. One I never signed up to play. It all came crashing down on a Thursday. I'd gone back to work like nothing was happening. Tried to serve coffee, smile, frost cupcakes, pretend that my life hadn't completely come off the rails. But I couldn't focus. The flash drive, the audio files, the video, my thoughts kept circling like a hawk over it all. Then Megan called again. She sounded panicked. "Sarah, I think I found him. Alex. He's at O'Hare." I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my keys, told the one staffer we had to close early, and drove like a madwoman. I don't know how Megan found out, but she said he was in Terminal 3, near Gate K5. I didn't think. I just went. I found him in line at security. Same gray jacket he always wore. Calm as ever. Like he wasn't about to disappear. I didn't yell. I walked right up behind him and tapped his shoulder. He turned, and his face froze. Just for a second. Then the smirk came back. "Sarah," he said, "smooth as ever, I was going to call you." I lost it. Right there in front of TSA, travelers, screaming babies, everyone. You were going to call me? After helping destroy my life? After pretending to care? After sitting in my house, drinking my coffee, lying to my face for months. People were turning, watching. He tried to grab my arm, to shush me, but I yanked away. Tell me the truth, Alex. Did you ever care? Or was this just some game you and Mark cooked up in Vegas while laughing at me? He looked around, panicked now. It wasn't like that. I didn't know it would go this far. I laughed, hard. You had a joint account. You bugged my house. You listened to me cry and then smiled while cashing in. So tell me, what part wasn't supposed to go that far? The loans? The fake affair? Or watching me fall apart? That's when security came over, asking what was happening. Megan showed up behind me, breathless, holding her phone up. He's a con artist, she shouted. He's working with a man who's already in jail for identity fraud. Check the name Mark Adams. Alex tried to run. He actually tried to push through the line and bolt, but they caught him within seconds. The rest felt like a blur. Security took us all into a holding room. I gave my statement. So did Megan. When they looked into Alex's ID and ran his face, everything unraveled. He wasn't just involved in my case. There were others. Multiple states. Women and men. Fake investments. Identity theft. Fraud. It took days, but eventually, they tied it all together. And it turned out, the worst part? Mark and Alex weren't just running a scam. They were part of a ring. A coordinated group that targeted emotionally vulnerable people, mostly divorcees, widows, small business owners. I was just one name on a very long list. The trial was long. Brutal. I had to sit in court and listen to the prosecutors lay out every detail of how they dismantled my life piece by piece. How they watched me. Used me. Megan testified too. So did two other women who came forward. Mark took a plea deal, 10 years with no chance of parole for at least 6. He looked tired. Defeated. Hollow. Alex? He didn't say a word the entire time. Just stared straight ahead. No apologies. No explanations. Just silence. After the verdict, I walked out of that courtroom feeling both empty and relieved. I was free, but I'd never be the same. Back at the bakery, people whispered. Customers asked questions, some out of concern, others just out of morbid curiosity. My staff tiptoed around me for weeks. Marty, the retired PI, came by with flowers and said, "You're stronger than you think, kid." Even Megan and I stayed in touch. Trauma does that, it makes unlikely friendships. We weren't best friends, but we'd survived the same hell, and that connected us. But the hardest part was looking in the mirror. I wasn't the same Sarah anymore. The trusting wife. The woman who thought her biggest problem was her bakery's rent going up. I'd learned what people were capable of, what I was capable of. I'd screamed in public. Stalked a man to an airport. Dug through garbage. I hated that part of me, and I understood it too. I wish I could say I've moved on completely. That I trust again. That I love again. But I don't, not yet. I'm learning. I go to therapy. I still wake up some nights thinking I hear Mark's voice. I still check my loan accounts obsessively. But I'm building back. Brick by brick. I tell my story when people ask, not because I want pity, but because I want people to know what this kind of betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your view of the world. And yet, I'm still here. Still baking. Still healing. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. No one will ever destroy me like that again. I've already been to the bottom. Now I climb.